Also, you didn't really know what you were doing, so you'd kind of, it was like literally throwing people food at people. Like, we had like hot meals in bags, and we were supposed to leave them on the floor, but half the time you were doing it with elderly people, so you couldn't leave it on the floor because they might not be able to bend down. When I started delivering for the food bank, I was, some people just couldn't cope with picking up the food and take it inside, so I'd have to take it inside. And you didn't really know what was happening with COVID, or this is before vaccination, so it just felt every time you went into somebody's home or something like that, it felt very loaded and very scary, actually. We shouldn't be in the position that we're in as a society in this country to have food banks. And so I can also be quite angry at this government who are responsible for all of this. But also I have to look at things practically and actually do some help. So we were delivering emergency food to people really that were very, very at the end of, in terms of the need that they had. And that was actually quite difficult because normally people come into the food bank and there's a great environment in there and it's really supportive and it's nurturing, so people don't feel uncomfortable. And it's very different. You're delivering food to people's homes, and that's uncomfortable for them and it's uncomfortable for you. And you're in some quite difficult parts of the city as well. And I'm a single female as well. And it's more just about how sad some of the people were. So I had one man, he rang me thinking I was the food bank, and he was crying because he'd actually been quite rude to me when because I was a bit late, I think, or something like that, when I was leaving the food. And then he rang back thinking he was apologising to the food bank, not to me. And he was just really crying, and he was like probably my age. And I was thinking, this is just awful that you're having to have me in this situation. So it makes you very angry at the injustice that there is in the world, and just seeing how desperate people were. It was really difficult. King's Heath is perceived as being a very affluent part of Birmingham, and there's obviously quite high levels of poverty and a lot of older, vulnerable people as well. So we ended up delivering around 50 meals a day for the first couple of months of lockdown, or anybody that was delivering it. And so you kind of realise that you also have to be kind of quite up, even if you're not feeling up. You have to kind of be this sort of happy person, really, as well. One woman was shielding with her daughter who had a chronic health condition, and then it was just, I think, the week before we could go back to the hairdressers. And I was talking to her daughter one day, and I was saying, "Oh, what colour shall I go when I can finally go back to the hairdressers?" And we were talking about mermaid colours, basically. And so when I turned up the following week after I'd been to the hairdressers, the woman stood there and she went, "Oh, you're the mermaid." And she goes, all she's been doing is talking about a mermaid all week, and that's the only other person they saw was me. And I do live my own company, but just going for a long walk and talking about nothing, not even anything important, just randomly just jabbering on about whatever's in your head, you suddenly realise that's kind of quite an important thing. So we walked along the kind of Kings Norton Canal, and all around kind of through Kings Norton, Bourneville, Cottage, all of that kind of area. And we used to walk all the way to Shirley. And that's still that's part of the Birmingham that I know the parks and things like that, but just having the freedom to walk along canals, which I didn't even know existed, it was just wonderful. But also, when you go through from the canal from Brandwood, at one point there's just a big canopy where the trees kind of go over, so it's just really green and the water. So that's just incredible. It's just like a different light, and also everyone had got dogs then. If you remember, suddenly everyone went and got a dog. And my friend has dogs that we walked. It's got Rottweilers, and they were beautiful. So actually, if you want to know what 2 meters looks like, walk with a Rottweiler, because everyone will keep their distance, and they are absolutely beautiful dogs. And so we'd walk with them, and just actually watching how excited they'd get about the scent and the smell. So what I actually think about it was how quiet it was. It was so lovely, and every time you walk past somebody, they'd always smile and say hello. There's a really famous heron. I'm not even joking. There's like a big heron. It's on everyone's Instagram. So everyone was doing that walk quite a lot. I didn't realise it was a very famous heron. I'm not quite sure it is the same heron, but it's sort of there's like, it's just an amazing. But I don't know if you've seen a heron. They're huge. They've got this amazing wingspan, and it's like that thing when it's so boring to say, oh, I went for walks and I appreciated nature. I went for walks. I really appreciated nature. I watched this massive bird fly off with this huge wingspan, and you're like, how do birds fly? I know intellectually, by the way, I know there's a whole thing about how birds fly. I don't want to know the physics of it. It's just that when you see a bird properly, you stop and watch a bird fly, and it's amazing wingspan. You're like, that's just fantastic. I don't walk anymore, which we were doing walks every evening, and I loved that. And now it's time because I was working then, but I didn't work like I do now. Um, I think I miss that people were quite compassionate. I don't mean banging pots and pans and things like that, but I think there was a lot more kindness and support for people. And it just feels like all of that's gone a bit out the window when when you hear people talk about when refugees, for example, were put up in hotels, people were kind of quite really supportive about that, so that make sure people were safe. Whereas now it's all really antagonistic about why we're putting up refugees in, and it's like, oh, we've just forgotten all of that. So I think there's still a lot of kindness, but I think people want to forget, and I don't think you should forget things. I think we went through an extraordinary time, and I think we should learn from it. But I particularly actually like that I'm very close with some people as a result of that, and that won't change. I also dropped a load of people, because I work in a sector where people are kind of quite expedient. They're friends with you because it's useful for them and stuff like that, and that's fine. That's work. But if I haven't spoken to somebody during lockdown, then I certainly don't presume that we have any kind of friendship now. So I'm quite black and white about my friendships. My friendships are really important to me, but I did kind of do a big clear out of people.